Hello, this is Jay Oza, and welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 14. And I also not only host this show, but I'm also a mentor for the Coursera course, Introduction to Public Speaking. And today we're lucky to have three guests on, and some of them are their regulars. Julie Finkelstein, Litesh Balakrishna, and Soumyan Tirumurthy. And I'll have them introduce themselves once I'm done with introducing myself. I live in Hazlet, New Jersey, which is about 40 miles from New York City. And like I always start out by saying, the reason why we do this show is to basically learn, teach, share, and support. So if you're watching this and you want to learn more about it, or if you have something to teach us or share with us or even want to support us, please join us and or watch us and give us your feedback. We'd like to know how we can help you as you are trying to develop into a better speaker. So today's show, we have three segments, and today's shows are going to be a little different. I think some of the topics we're talking about are things that are, I consider these a little advanced topics because when you take this Introduction to Public Speaking course, they talk about these things, but they don't really focus that much time on it. Especially the first segment is on pauses. And this is something I do believe that Dr. McGarity in that course addresses it, but there's not that much focus on that. And I do think pauses are very important. I think this is a little bit of an advanced topic, but it's something that we all need to understand better. And I think I'd like to have a discussion with all of you to see what you think about this. The second segment is on this famous study that everybody quotes about that was done probably 30, 40 years ago by a professor at UCLA. His name is Albert Mehrabian. And you've probably heard of it, where he says that when somebody's giving a speech, the way people processes a speech is 55% of it is through the body language, 38% is through their voice, and only 7% through words. Now, there are a lot of people out there who have tried to debunk that myth, but it's not really clear that's what he was really saying. So I'm going to use that for another reason, is that assuming that is somewhat true, which I do believe that it is like that, there is more emphasis on the body, voice, and the words, then how should one prepare a speech if you agree with that? So I want to talk about that. And the third segment is on humor. We did touch upon this last week when Julie and I were on the show, but now we have Litesh and Soumyan. I want to broaden the discussion, and this time I included two videos, two TED Talks. One was by two professors. One was by a professor from UK. Her name is Sophie Scott. These are experts on humor, and she did a TED Talk, I believe, this year in Vancouver. And the other one is a professor out of Colorado. His name is Peter McGraw. And actually, I have his book called The Humor Code, which I highly recommend. I'm learning a lot about humor from reading his book. So we'll talk about humor, what works. And humor is a very tricky subject. I always tell people, if you are not funny, avoid it. Most likely, it can backfire on you. So, and humor is one of those things where we all think we're funny, but, audience may not think so. Okay, like I try a lot of times, and I know it fails 99.9% of the time. So, but I'll have to make sure I don't use humor, or at least practice more before I use it. So that's me. At this point, I'd like Julie, Litesh, and Soumyan to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with our first segment. Okay, Julie, you want to go next?
Hi, good morning. Hi, Jay, Soumyan, and Litesh, and everybody else who's watching. Thank you all for showing up. I'm in Stanford, and it's a bright day but cloudy. So I traverse from Stanford to Chicago to Canada to Hong Kong to China, and I like to say it's over 1,000 years of technology because I started out with cows for power in my village and no electricity, and I ended up working in leading edge technology fields of relational databases. And I am also a fellow, so you're looking at someone who really transformed in a lifetime. My personal interest is in looking at success in terms of taking one skill and multiplying it, a multiplier effect of success. And one thing I have really found public speaking to be really helpful for me is I'm also a fellow mentor, and I got invited to the mentor. I'm pretty unique as a mentor also because I haven't finished the course yet. I'm about to do my persuasive speech. I was scooped up by Coursera because I also host a Google community called Introduction to Public Speaking Coursera, and then on Saturdays we read a book on success. And my speech, my last speech I'm about to do is persuasive speech, and I'm taking it from the point of view as active participation is crucial. It brings you success helps you to finish your course in public speaking. The success rate right now is it's about winning 1,000 or less. That's what my gut feel says based on some research I've done. And I will further submit that the skills you use in active participation leads to core skills for success in your life and in your work. And so I, based on that, doing a lot of meditation, self-help, self-achievement practices throughout decades. So that's who I am, and I'm looking forward to. And this Speech Talk Live also does that for me. So I find as Jay and I were talking yesterday, that this is a forum for safe experimentation, practice, discussion, support, and enjoyment and camaraderie. So thank you, Jay, for all that you do. And I am muting my phone.
All right, Julie, thanks a lot. Latesh or Somyan, you want to go next? Who wants to go next? Somyan, go ahead.
Latesh, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Somyan. Julie, that was a very nice introduction. So, hello, everyone. My name is Latesh Balakrishnan. I am based out from Kochi, that's the south part of India. And I work in the software industry as a project manager. And I have been participating in this forum for the last couple of weeks. And it has been really a good experience for me. It has really improved my public talking skills. And definitely even my confidence level and the personality has slightly changed. So it has been a very good positive impact on me. And the team is very helpful with good constructive feedback for improvements, and that has definitely helped me to improve my personality as well as my there have been many areas where I find that there has been improvements. So thanks a lot, and I think it's a great platform for all of us to collaborate and share such thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Somyan. I'm based in Bangalore, India. I am also one of the mentors for this Introduction to Public Speaking course. I did this course originally when it was in the classic format. That is, it was run over some 10 weeks, and everyone was together in a single batch board. So the interaction between peers used to be very high. Anyway, now I'm a mentor in this on-demand platform, and here the flow rate of people is spread over time, and so at any given point in time, the number of people interacting seems to be on the lower side. But we still keep doing a lot of experimentation with increasing the interaction with the participants, and we keep doing various things, and this Speech Talk Live is one of those. And Julie's been doing some experiments also, and I have been planning to do yet another type of experiment from this Sunday onwards, which will be to have at any given point in time cover 1 week of video. I mean 1 week of course material, and just discuss that without having to go and make any speech, etc. It is just to keep following the syllabus and try to sort of have a chat on whatever was the subject matter for that week. So I don't know how many people will actually join in this, as I was saying, in the on-demand mode, the number of people who are going through this at any given point of time, they are all in different weeks. The entire course perhaps is a 10-week-long course, and they're all in different weeks. And the number of people who may be there on a single week may be a very limited one. So I really don't know how that will hit. But then I'm interested in doing a lot of experimentation with means of engaging with the audience, etc. That's my primary interest in these forums. Thank you.
All right, Soumyan, thanks a lot. The one thing I want to say before we move to our first segment is, and I think I might have mentioned it in the past, that we talk about public speaking, and I really don't like the word public because I think it's important to speak well in all occasions, because even if you're speaking like one of the things I like about this show is that it's allowing me and probably all of you an opportunity to speak well. And if you're speaking well in this particular forum, then you're likely are going to speak well if you're giving a public speech. There shouldn't be really a difference whether you're speaking here or speaking in front of an audience. And if you're here, you're going to have to try hard because this is low stakes, right? If you say something wrong or if you're not funny, nobody's going to come after you in any way. But it is an opportunity, as like both Julie and Soumyan, it's an experimentation. So if you want to try something as far as, like one of the things that I'm noticing is when I listen to these videos, that in the beginning I have a very good control of my voice, but then as the show goes on, I'm losing it. So I'm going to try to make sure that I maintain that voice control throughout the show. And these are kind of things that we all need to go back and look at. And maybe the next week show, I want to go and do a segment on, now that you've done 14 segments or so many, what do you like about the way you're coming across? And what are the things that you need to work on? Because you have a lot of body of work that's been created here. So that's one of the themes that I think we can focus on. What are the things you like about the way you're speaking, and what are the things you want to work on, the way you're coming across based on all the videos that you've recorded? So that's something I want to focus on, because we've now done this for, at least each of us have at least done more than 10 of these. Okay, so at this point I'm going to take a brief pause and then move to segment number 1, okay? Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 14, and segment number 1. In this segment, I want to focus on a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention. It's something that most people probably don't even think about. It has to do with pauses when you're giving a speech. Now, pauses are very important because I think if you put pauses in a strategic fashion in a speech, that means that you are focusing on your audience. You're giving your audience a chance to catch up. Because remember, you know a subject much better than your audience. But when you're putting a pause in a strategic manner in a speech, means that now you're saying, I'm going to pause, and it gives your audience a chance to catch up and saying, okay, he just made a point. But then after you pause, you can't just suddenly move on to another subject. You now need to take that statement or some soundbite and expand on it or elaborate on it. And if you notice, I think it was one of the lectures where Dr. McGarity, I think he was looking at Elizabeth Warren's speech, and I think he does an excellent job, where she says something about how the people's salary are just not keeping up. I don't remember the exact. And then, I don't know whether she pauses. I think she does pause. And then she elaborates on it, and she explains it. So when you take pauses like that, it gives your audience like, oh, there's a pause there. I need to now really pay attention. It anticipates what's about to come, and they're likely to remember if you do it in that manner. Like, here's a statement. I'm going to take a pause so you can process it. but now I'm going to explain it in case you didn't quite get it. Now I'm going to explain it. And I think it's an effective technique that we should all practice. But this is a strategic pause. A lot of times in a speech, people pause, but it's not strategic. Either they lost their thought and they're pausing. Those pauses actually hurt your speech. So you have to be careful what kind of pauses. So what I'm saying here is that you have to rehearse the pauses. You can't just let it just happen, because if you let it happen, then it may reflect poorly on your speech, where people may say, oh, I think he's lost. I think he's lost his thought. That's not the pause you want. You want the pause to be helping your speech, not hurting your speech, if that makes any sense. So I wanted to kind of bring this up, and I'm going to quote something that this author, her name is, what's her name? Olivia Caban. And I'll just read this thing. She's written a book called Charisma Myth, and I'll just read this little paragraph. I'll just quote it exactly as she has written, and I'll make it brief. It says, "But just as in conversations, pausing regularly during your presentations is an important skill to acquire. It's one of the hallmarks of effective speakers and really is one of the key tools for great speaking. Throughout your speech, pause frequently, deliberately. Have the confidence to make your listeners wait for your words. It's called a dramatic pause for a reason. It adds drama." So, unquote. So this is, I think it's very important that when you're giving a talk, you really practice when you want to pause and how and why are you pausing and how do you want to do it. And it is something that you do have to rehearse if you want to come across as a much more confident speaker. And I do agree with what she's saying, that pauses, done in a right way, makes you look much more confident. So at this point, I'd like you guys to add your thoughts on what you think of that, and how do you use pauses when you're giving a speech. Julie, you want to go first?
As you were talking, I got really excited about this topic. So I think, first of all, most of us, when we first start doing, this is me, this is what I just learned from doing this public speaking, is that we tend to rush our words, and then we're out of breath, and then we pause because we're breathing, and then we lose our train of thought. So one of the things that really, now that you're talking, I think I'm going to practice is, as a meditator, I should know this, right? Coordinate the breath with the pause, and that you need to take breaths, because if you don't breathe, you die. So I think it's very important that as we practice our speech, which is what you're talking about, rehearsing, is that in the beginning we consciously breathe in and breathe out, see how long our breath is, and that we allocate time for that. So in addition to the dramatic pause, I think there's a natural rhythm pausing that kind of creates a rhythm for our brain to be in train on, so we can follow the speech. And most languages have that natural rhythm anyways. And I think that, so to come back to your speech, you said that there's strategic pauses and there's those I'll call them space out pauses. I think one of the ways to eliminate space out pausing is to be conscious of your breath and integrate that into your speech, breathing in, breathing out. And then the second thing is that it's an additional advanced skill is creating opportunities for dramatic pauses. And that's a different skill, and I'm going to have to read about that before I can speak to that. So thank you.
Okay, Julie. Latesh, you want to? What do you think of this?
Yes. Yeah. So pauses for me, like as I mentioned, like when I used to do some talks and presentations during my college days, or even the initial start of my career, talking in front of an audience actually produces some jitters. So it's like I think I have read it somewhere, like it increases your heart rate, your breathing becomes, your breathing pattern actually changes. Like Julie said, probably like with meditation or slow breathing practice, maybe you'll be able to control our thoughts. But at that particular point of time, when we are suddenly in front of the audience, we tend to lose our lines. So we will be in a flow of statements. If somebody talks something or some noise happens in the background, suddenly we lose that chain, that rhythm of thought. So instead of probably jittering through that particular area where we again try to connect with the earlier thought process, we just try to talk something out and then again try to connect it. Instead of that, maybe I should do a pausing, think for some time, maybe just it, and it's like when we pause and when we are in a live talk, even if we pause for a second or a two, we think like we have paused for a long time, but that may not be the case. So even we can actually take the liberty of just stopping our thought, just just keeping ourselves closed, just be quiet for some time, just gather our thinking pattern, and then again start with the flow of thoughts. So it comes automatically, and it comes naturally when we do the practice of giving this kind of talks and speeches with a larger audience. It takes time. It doesn't. Nothing comes automatically. With practice, I think it comes. But pausing is definitely very important because it helps to make it sound very natural, and it helps to keep the same flow of thought process that we are actually trying to talk something, we're trying to convey something. So it actually connects the dots, and to engage the audience instead of just going here and there. It is very important. Like I remember during my school days, during college, like when the professor used to be giving some kind of a talk, or he's telling some a boring subject. So in that case, what we used to do is like we used to play around with the mobiles or just talk with each other. So the moment he pauses, we know that there is something. Either he has caught us and we need to be careful, or like he has gone back to on the board and he's writing something. So those are the times wherein like pauses becomes important. When you are having a talk like that, especially in the classroom kind of activities where this pauses means somebody is going to be caught, or like we need to be more attentive. Maybe he will ask us some questions on what he was discussing. So those kind of fear gets in when we pause. So those kind of I think emotions are really important. Instead of giving a long boring talk, break it into certain segments. Maybe you can do it consciously or unconsciously, but be natural, and I think it will come with practice. Yeah, that's my take, Jay. Thanks. Over to you.
Okay, good. Soumyan?
Yeah. I think when people say and and things like that, those are perhaps the first places where one can introduce these pauses. Instead of saying you can just leave a pause there. Perhaps that will help you to recover and to bring out the words from your own mind. It's what Jay mentioned was give your audience a little bit of time for them to assimilate the thought and think over it. There may also be another complementary dimension of ourselves, trying to bring the next thought and idea and things like that and arrange it in order. So when we try to talk in a run-on manner, we don't give enough time. We try to push words at a fast rate. So giving pauses at appropriate times will perhaps slow down the speech and make our speech a little more consistent and a little more smooth in flow. So that's one thought I have. Second is, I haven't really used, where to insert a pause or something like in a very deliberate manner and made any speech. And however, I do recall when I was doing the course, the original round, with every new assignment, I tried to incorporate more and more features from whatever was taught. And then, the script I used to prepare at the time, I used to write, pause here, or, increase your emotional energy here, etc. Those kind of clues I used to write in the script itself. So I think that we can always take a script and say, look, where can we introduce a strategic pause, as Jay was mentioning, where can we introduce a strategic pause and put a note in the script. So, when we practice, we do that, and that also comes out much more naturally, much more systematically as we talk. So that's something that we can do. I haven't been really doing much of it in most of the talks, really speaking. But then at that time, when I was very focused on making assignments and submitting, I made a lot of conscious effort at introducing these kind of small nuances that were taught in the class, and then used to have notes in the script. Okay. Then the third aspect is when we hear the lectures, we feel that maybe not enough emphasis has been placed on pause and things like that. I had the same kind of feeling with regard to hand gestures. So, in fact, a couple of weeks back, when I wanted to bring in a talk on hand gestures in this forum, that's the kind of feeling I had, and I thought, okay, I must go and now do a comprehensive study about hand gestures and bring back and give something more than what Professor McGarity said. So during that exercise, what I found was I went and looked at some 10-15 resources, read through so much of content, and then finally shrunk all of that into one small compact module, and then went back to see what Professor McGarity had to say. Actually, he had said in half a lecture all that I collected. He had collected and said that. But then, since it was just mentioned in just one half of a video, I had that feeling that, well, it has not been covered adequately. But ultimately, after I went through some 5-6 videos, I found that the entire content of whatever I learned could be shrunk into that half a video. And that is what Professor McGarity had covered. I didn't discover anything new. So I'm, in fact, thinking that when we have this, when Jay said pause is something that may not have been covered enough, I'm wondering whether if all that we know about pauses, etc., are collected, and go back and see what Professor McGarity has said, he might have covered that fairly in an elaborate manner. Whatever that is important, he might have already said that. Okay, so as professional speakers, every sentence, every word, etc., is perhaps being well thought out and well structured. So sometimes, in our ability to listen, we don't read all the 100 clues that are coming along with that talk. We only pick up only 50% of those clues and things like that, and are sensitive only to that. For others, we may not be sensitive. Suppose we say pause as a topic, and then we watch a lot of videos specifically looking for pause. We may have a lot more to learn from that. Then, if we are to be listening to, very many talks, with a much more broader, interest in understanding various aspects, then we may not be able to catch the, how strategically some pause has been positioned, etc. So perhaps that's where all this, example talks, etc., that have been picked up and projected by Professor McGarity comes into, becomes important. So if I go and try to look at pause in some 10 other videos, maybe not all of them are focusing on pause. But then if somebody has gone and picked some videos saying these are the exemplary videos which use pause very strategically, very effectively, and then compile that, then we may be able to have a much better ability to understand and appreciate that topic. I think that's what is done in most of the example talks, and I feel that we should also perhaps go ahead and compile some talks which are exemplary in terms of how those speakers have used pause. That's my view. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Soumyan. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, with what Dr. McGarity, he does cover a lot of these topics that we're discussing, but what happens is that he can't really spend too much time on it, right? Because in pauses, the way we're discussing it, there are so many different ways pauses occur in a speech, and it's the best way to understand pauses is like listening to music. If you're at a nightclub, there can't be any pause in the music because people are not there to appreciate the music. They just want to dance. A dance music cannot have pauses, right? Whereas if you go to a concert, then the music should have pauses, because those pauses make a big difference. It really differentiates a great artist from an average artist. Like if you listen to the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, that opening motive, there's that brief pause in there. If that pause isn't there, that music is pretty much crap. So that pause makes a tremendous difference even in music, And I'm saying that if you can just take that and apply it to your speech. Now, I mean, not saying that we're going to give a speech like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, okay? That's not going to happen. But, you know, it's a good way to understand it, that when you listen to music, see where the pauses are taking place in the music. And similarly, when you are giving a speech, and one of the things that you said is that that script, and I think Julie may have said this too. So this woman, Olivia Caban, she says that in her, when she's writing her speech, she actually puts down pause, breathe, and slow down. I thought that was pretty interesting, that she actually makes a note of that. And the other thing is something that Latesh mentioned, that when you're speaking, you want your speed of your speaking synchronized with the way your audience is going to be processing it, if that makes any sense. And a lot of times what happens is we tend to speak according to how our brain is spitting out all the words. And that's fine if you're speaking to yourself. But right now, you three are listening to me. I have to err on the side that to slow it down, to take deliberate pauses, so that your processing is synchronized with the way I'm speaking, so that so you can process as much as possible of what I'm saying. And I think that was a good point that Latesh, that you made, that when you're speaking, you have to be really aware of how your audience is likely to process. That's not easy, by the way. That is hard. Okay, I'll tell you right now. A lot of times I get comment. Sometimes I don't think they're really that accurate, that I was speaking too slowly, and that was done on for deliberate reason. That I want to speak slowly because I rather err on speaking slowly than err on not somebody understanding what I'm saying. So at this point, any closing thoughts, Julie, Latesh, and Soumyan, and then we'll close out this segment.
Great topic. Thank you. I learned a lot from everybody. Thanks, Latesh and Soumyan. I took notes too. Thank you.
I just thought I will make one additional point. Suppose I take a talk and then say, I mean, where do I want to put a sentence saying, do you understand? Are you able to get my point? Something like that. You know, suppose some 2 or 3 places you want to place that. So you know you are able to emphasize. Look, I have made a profound point. Note this. Something like that. No. So instead of saying that sentence, we can put a pause there. Okay, so that's perhaps a way we can. I've heard some people who talk in Hindi, etc. say, "Samajh rahe ho na?" Something like that. No, have you understood? I mean, that's perhaps a little. I mean, you know, it's perhaps a very elderly person who can say that to somebody else. But then, you know, it may not be easy to say that to our audience. But then, anyway, that is the kind of context in which this pause can come. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, I do agree. Like pauses are very important, especially when you are giving a talk. When we want to give an emphasis on some important word, I think it makes sense to actually pause and rather not go continuously with the talk. Rather, we pause for a minute, let the audience absorb that particular word or a particular number, or anything that we not need them to have a thought on it. So that pause there is very critical. And maybe like when the chain of thought process is broken and we are fumbling, I think it makes sense to just pause and get the thought process again synchronized. Instead of using a filler to connect the talk, it's better to pause a minute, just maybe few seconds, and then again get back to the talk and continue on from there. So this is a very important topic actually, and it is good, Jay, that we actually discussed about this particular part that needs to be covered in any conversation, any talk. I think this is very critical. Pause at the right place gives importance to what we are trying to convey. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Latesh, and we can continue this discussion on Google+. Just one last thought on something that Soumyan just said. It just occurred to me when you said that sometimes people use ahs, and all these fillers. I think when you see I don't know, sometimes I watch Hillary Clinton speaking, and I see her using that. And I think she does that deliberately. And I think the reason she does it deliberately is she doesn't want to come across sounding too perfect. And I mean, Hillary Clinton has given lots and lots of speeches. She probably has lots of coaches that people have coached her. But somebody probably has also coached. Sometimes you see these speakers, because we're always told not to use ahs. And then when we see these speakers who we think are like a model of good speakers are using it, I even sometimes see Obama do it too. And I think they do it not because they don't know that, but I think they do it because so that they become more relatable. So that's another thought anyway. But at this point, we'll stop and move to the next segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 14, segment number 2. In this segment, I want to focus on this famous study or research that people always quote. It was research done by Professor Albert Mehrabian, and what people simplify this research in saying that when somebody gives a speech, the way audience processes a speech is that 55% is through the body language, 38% is through vocal variety, how a person uses his or her voice, and only 7% is through words. And this creates all kinds of controversy that, if I'm just like using body language, can you make, like if I'm just using body language with words, but not with the voice, but not using any words, can you understand 93% of what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that was a good, but you can't understand it, right? So they get really ridiculous saying that, oh, wait, am I supposed to understand 93% if you talk like a monkey or something? I can't understand a monkey, and that's essentially what the study is saying. So they really twist that research and make it look like it was a total joke and it's not even a research. But that's not really what he was saying. I think what he's saying is that when you put all of it together, one dominates the other. So like right now I'm speaking and you're watching me. Because I'm using hand gestures and I'm also using my voice in a particular way, the hand gestures will probably rank as the top, like, wow, he's really getting into this, passionate. So somehow that's dominating in how you're processing what I'm saying. Similarly, the way I'm using my voice, the intonation on how I end my sentence, or the way I'm the way I'm using my voice, it's a technique that also tends to dominate the specific words that I'm using. I think that's what he was really saying. He wasn't saying that you can just communicate through mime and all that. That's not what he was trying to say. But people misinterpret this research. But what I wanted to focus on in this particular segment is to see whether you even agree with this, whether you think that when you're giving a speech, the body language, that's how people are processing what you're saying. I believe it. I do believe, I don't know whether the percentages are right, but I do believe the body language and voice are definitely more important than the words that you're using. You've got to use words, otherwise there is no speech, right? But the way people are processing it is in that order: body language, voice, and then the words. I mean, if that weren't the case, then we wouldn't go and see somebody perform a Shakespeare play. Because Shakespeare's written the plays are going to be essentially similar to what he has already written, but we want to see these actors, how they're performing, how they're going to say the words, and the words are already there. If you just the words, then you don't need to go see a Shakespeare comedy or tragedy. So that comes to the point, like, so let's say, like Julie's working on her speech, persuasive speech on meditation. How should she really work on this speech? she already has enough knowledge about meditation. So at this point, she knows about this topic. Should she start focusing on her body language and just use the words that she already knows, the speech she already knows, right? The body language, then work on her, how she uses her voice, and then maybe clean up or tweak her wording appropriately. The way most of us work on our speeches, we tend to focus most of our attention on words, maybe 70%, 80%. And I'm not sure, unless you're an advanced speaker, you really put a lot of emphasis on how you are using your voice. And then the body language is just kind of incidental. Most of us don't even know whether we're using the right body language or the wrong body language. Like, there's no real effort really made. Am I using the right gesture or am I using the wrong gesture? So the question is, the question I want to have you guys comment on it is, what do you think of this study? Do you agree with it? Based on when you see a speech, does it have an effect on you as far as the body, the voice, and the words? And how are you going, if you agree with it, how do you plan to use this when you're developing a speech? Saying, you know what, I really need to make sure that my body language is right, then make sure my voice is also very consistent with the body language, and then I'll make sure that the words are all integrated really well with my body language and my voice. So that's the question I want you guys to comment on. What you think of this study, and how do you currently doing it, and what do you plan to do it if that's what you think that people how are processing a speech. Julie, want to go next?
Thanks, Jay. What a great topic to investigate. I guess what I'm tapping into, I guess I want to speak to two things. One is what I'm tapping into, and secondly, what it means to my speech. So in terms of what I'm tapping into is that a lot of the information, meaning, and the relationship that's established at the moment of contact is subconscious. And this has been done in many studies. One of my favorite books on that topic is by Malcolm Gladwell, Blink. And, you know, he documents many of your decisions are made before someone even say a word, right? The other thing is someone did a study about Indian spousal selection, right? Because a lot of it is matchmakers. But yet somehow when these days, young people do have a right to say yes or no. Within the first 2 seconds or 2 minutes, I can't remember, in a very short time, before much is said, they already know whether that's a right mate or not, right? So I think that underscores and substantiates the fact that we make our decisions and I think of yes and no with very little deliberate, conscious words, okay? So on that level, I have to agree. In terms of how I'm going to work on my speeches, I'm definitely going to have a section on body language. I've always done that, right? Because I try to smile. I want to project a friendly and relatable personality. So for me, a lot of the times that means just maintaining eye contact is a challenge, because I'm a bit nerdy and I like to think, imagine things. So that to me is a body language, right? So it's not necessarily apparent body structures. The way my posture is aligned, how comfortable I am, those are all very powerful body languages. So I think for me is, yes, I do agree. And the next speech I render to the group, I'm going to take one more step, is review my body language and ask myself, is that how I want to project myself? And not necessarily for me at this point to increase this posture, this gesture. I think they are very important, and I appreciate all the work Somyun has done, but I'm not at that stage yet. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's Yeah, the main thing is as long as you're aware of it, and that that when you're preparing for a speech, that the body language is something you're also practicing before you actually record your speech. The reason that I bring this up is that I review a lot of speeches, and people are just happy. I mean, this is based on the reviews I do on Coursera on-demand platform. I get the feeling that people are just happy to just finish the speech. They're not working on these techniques. That they do a good job with organization, invention, but when it comes to stylistic side of it, they're missing out on that. So that's why I thought that this would be a good topic to have a discussion. That what that tells me is that they're focusing heavily on the speech from a words point of view. Like, I got all this checklist, you know, I got 3 points, I got all of these things, arguments, and but when they actually record it, they are missing out on the body language and the voice. It seems like that's the first time they're saying it, giving a speech, but that part has not been rehearsed. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Latesh, what are your thoughts on this?
Hi, Jay. Yeah. This particular talk by Peter McGraw and the lab that he has established at the University of Colorado. In fact, I just went and searched on Google whether it exists, and yeah, it is very much there. Humor Research Lab, Hull, as he mentioned in the talk. So I think that's something looking at a very natural, phenomenon in any human being to laugh when he is excited, when he is happy, and laugh not really in a way that sounds ridiculous, but more like in a funny way. So how do we introduce that laughter, and how do we make sure that the humor is introduced at the right time? So he has introduced the theory of benign violation. If I'm not wrong, that's how he had mentioned it. So the way he has actually brought out some certain cases of how we have actually done this particular study of what could be a violent behavior, a violation behavior, what could be benign behavior, which could be a mix of both behaviors. So that's actually giving some insights into how we can look at very natural occurrence, natural phenomena to be studied scientifically, and we have actually sliced and diced and made a good
Hey, Latesh, can I
theory
just interrupt you for a
it.
second? Latesh, can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I think you moved on to the next segment here. That's
is it?
That's on humor. You're bringing the third segment into the second segment. I hate to interrupt you, but yeah, that's okay. That's okay. What we're talking about is, and that's fine, because the point you're making is going to be, it dovetails nicely into our next segment, that you also need to practice the humor part. But the main thing is that when you worked on your speech, when you gave that speech on Stage Gates, right? How much of effort, or did you even consciously make an effort to say, okay, I need to work on my body language, I need to work on my voice, because you already had the text, because you already know the topic really well. So can you comment on that, on as far as the body language and the voice part of it? How much, like, did you rehearse that, or is that something, it was more like an afterthought?
Right. For me, during this preparation phase for Stage Gates, I did do some recording, and I looked at the way I was talking and body language. Based on that, I made an analysis, like where I should be giving the right emphasis, where I should ask questions, and probably I should introduce some humor into my discussion. So I did do that, and when the actual live talk was going on at that point of time, I did find that because I had rehearsed it earlier, I was a bit more comfortable, and probably the humor part did not come out as well as I had thought out to be. So I found that the people, even though I just spoke out that particular humorous statements, but nobody laughed. So I was like, okay, maybe I should, have put it in a different context, or maybe I should have used a different way of putting it. So those were some learnings, but it is good to have that kind of rehearsal, some kind of preparation before we go and talk. Definitely nothing goes as per plan. Even if we are doing a project, nothing goes very specific to the plan. Right? There are always some kind of variation that is expected. But overall, if I had not prepared, probably I would not have ended up in a better way. So that literally makes more sense when we actually do some preparation. We actually look at our body language, look at the way we are going to put some humor into our talk, and get the audience involved, ask questions, pause. Pause also is important. I didn't do it very consciously, but it did come out. It did come out when I was actually trying questions and getting a response from the team. I did pause. So that was all good. And I think humor and laughter, when it is introduced at the right moment, it gives a very significant impact for the audience, because they want entertainment along with information. So when you combine an educative talk along with some humor and entertainment, that's a terrific mix for getting the audience to listen to you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and we'll touch more upon humor because that's a big topic. But yeah, no, I agree with you that that a lot of these things with humor you have to be careful. But I just the thing that I'm working on right now, and I'll let Soumyan talk because I know he has a lot to say here. That you do have to practice the body language part of it, and also the part that I know that I have to really work on is my voice, and it's hard. I need to take voice lessons because the more I listen to it, it's not coming across the way I'd like it to. And what we're doing here is a practice. So if you have something humorous to add, practice it here, because you don't want, like you said, when you tried your humor, it didn't work out, probably because you didn't try it anywhere else first. Because humor is one of those things that even the comedians have to constantly practice their routine. I read this a book called Little Bets, where like Jerry Seinfeld or Chris Rock will test it out like 50, 60 times before they actually, take it out on the road. So, Soumyan, what are your thoughts on this whole Mehrabian formula of 55, 38, and 7?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Well, I mean, again, I draw upon the kind of study I did for that body, hand gestures related thing, which in fact went on to cover many other topics also, the entire body language related thing. What I felt was, I perhaps agree that the body language would have had that 55% impact, etc. But that doesn't mean that the body language has to be, shown so much importance in the overall talk. Perhaps I think what it really means is a bad body language can cause a distraction to the extent of 50%. I mean, that's the way I was trying to look at. Because what I understood from that, from my earlier study was this body language and things like that are more of a hygiene factor. Hygiene factor means if you do a bad job of it, they'll drag your speech down. But if you do a fantastic job of it, it's not that alone is going to win the argument and make you the best speaker. You're still the content, the subject matter you talked of, and how you carried that message, etc., are important. But the body language can leave you with a positive, what do you call, bedrock on which your image can stand, or it can pull you down. So it has got more capacity to pull you down, and that's where the body language importance perhaps comes in. So most of the suggestions were you should not be very rigid, you should not be showing apprehension. Those kind of things were emphasized. So there was also some, I mean, a series of videos, you know, at least some 7 or 8 speakers which are shown in one single video. Okay, where there was one guy who went around walking all across the stage and looking at audience in each and every second and talking to them. But then he came out very well. But apparently that kind of a skill to move around and make so much of body language, etc., is a very high level of skill, and you know that that's not going to be easy to you know, practice. If you really look at audiovisual communication in a broader sense, if you see movies or TV, I mean drama or whatever it is, they perhaps are the highest level of audiovisual communication, where in acting, body language is very heavily emphasized. Perhaps they even put background music to you know, to bring out the emphasis of the context and situation and things like that. But in a public speaking, we are not bringing in that much of drama. I think, in fact, if I look at it, in public speaking, we may even have a situation where you know, much of the public speaking in the past perhaps was on the stage, like Professor McGarity has been teaching us. But I think I have a view that most public speaking per se in future is going to be on YouTube videos. Okay, here we are going to be reaching out to hundreds of thousands of people, and they may be watching it at different time asynchronously. I might have been delivered a face-to-face talk in a place where there may have been some 30-40 people, but if I put up video, I'm going to have perhaps some at least even for my simplest of videos, there are going to be perhaps some 1,000 people who are going to view over a period of time. So my view is public speaking at a future time is going to be a lot more on YouTube, and there even, you know, the standing back some 1.5 feet to show your you know, the mid shot from hip to head, I think is becoming a kind of distraction. So I'm thinking of more and more of facial expression oriented you know, skills are going to be important for public speaking on YouTube kind of a medium in a future day than the whole body language. The whole body language is appropriate to a physical appearance on a stage, okay, and I think that's the way the emphasis can be. This is the thought I had. In my own attempts to implement this, in my first speech, I was absolutely horrible in terms of body language. I was very restricted because of the way my camera and other things were positioned. My second speech, in informative speech, I moved around. I tried to move around a lot, and I got a lot of comments saying that, look, it was highly distracting. I was not able to do it in a very, you know, in a manner that fitted the situation. Whereas in my persuasive speech, I was able to make body language, I was able to make hand gestures, facial expressions, etc. And even, that was with mid shot, of course. That came out a lot better than you know, the physical movement, etc. I had in the informative speech. My persuasive speech had much better body language. So that's my own personal interpretation. But body language, you must focus and try to cultivate. You must do separate rehearsals for body language alone. It's by simply practicing, you know, talking with the script, etc. It's not going to come. You have to go and stand in front of a mirror and talk. That's what I did for my, you know, my persuasive speech. I stood in front of a mirror and did the body language related rehearsals, and then went out to do a recording. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Yeah, when you mentioned about 100,000, I'm going to have to pay some outfit to keep hitting click and view it so that I get more than 10 views per per speech. Right now, it seems like I go back and keep clicking it when I see it going up.
Don't underestimate.
You can pay me. I'm cheap.
I tell you, when I posted my Japanese language tutorial videos, you know, I used to get 2 views, 3 views per day kind of a thing. I was so dejected, and in fact, I stopped the entire series. And you know what is the total viewership of some 45 odd videos together? It is perhaps something like 1.5 lakhs now. I do not believe that. I mean, that is the kind of a number I have. But that accumulated over 5 years, and it came from 45 videos. My most popular video perhaps has hit about 10,000 plus. Okay. So that's an entirely different thing. All that I'm saying is your cumulative number you will get there will be much larger. I mean, than what you will ever get in a face-to-face talk. In your face-to-face talk, after your talk, it's over. You are not going to get any more views for that at all.
Right. No, that's yeah. So any closing thoughts? I think this was something we can have a follow-on discussion on the whole body language, the Mehrabian formula, and how should you prepare your speech, knowing that that formula does exist. Like I said, I think that even in an informative speech, if you are giving a speech, then you just being there is saying something. If you're just standing in front of an audience and saying something, it somehow is important. Otherwise, why are you even there? So I do tend to agree that you are the message, because otherwise, like when Latesh gave his talk on stage gates, they didn't pick anybody, they picked him. So right away, by picking him, he became the message. Otherwise, they could have just easily gone to done a Google search and gotten that information. So now, because you're there, it's the burden is on you to be the difference maker, and that's why the way you integrate the body language and the voice and the words, they all have to be in sync there. Otherwise, the speech kind of collapses, and that's what the whole point of this was. That that a lot of the time when you're starting out in this course, Introduction to Public Speaking, we do tend to focus a lot on the words, the speech, the invention, the organization. But when you look at this formula, Mehrabian's formula, if you agree that that is how people are processing it, you should actually work it from the other side. Let me make sure I got my body language, the voice, and then I'll work on the words later on to make sure that it is in sync with the entire message that I'm trying to convey. Anyway, Julie, any closing thoughts before we move on to the next segment?
Yes. Yes. So first of all, thank you, and I would just like to take what you always say, that there's public speech, but there's speech, and speech is speech. I would like to say that your body language is always there. Everywhere you go, you take your body language with you, and it underlies the question of how do you present yourself, without you even thinking about it, who you are comes across. So I think a smile is really a great relational connector. So I'll quit there. Thank you.
Latesh?
Yeah, I think the Mehrabian formula is something that I need to research a bit on. But as Julie mentioned, it's something that we do as a natural way of expression. So it's just about communication. It's just about communicating our thoughts. It needs to reach to the other person, and then the audience should be able to reciprocate what we are talking. So it's a two-way mechanism with some barriers which we need to probably remove, and those could be maybe our body language, our expressions, our long or short pauses, our confidence level. These are some kind of barriers and some kind of helpers as well. So we need to accordingly balance our talk, our mindfulness, being aware of how we need to put our communication across to the audience. I think that will make a lot of difference. Thanks.
Excellent. And Soumyan, any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I just want to reiterate what I was saying. Yes, body language forms a very important dimension of total communication. That's why in audiovisuals, like in drama or movies and TV shows and things like that, there is so much of direction that is being done. There are people who are directing, they're taking shots. Perhaps it is consisting of thousands of 10-second shots which have been rehearsed and played back. But then in real life public speaking, we are not going to have that much of opportunity. The way that audiovisuals are prepared requires that kind of. So we cannot hold so much of body language related clues also. Many people even struggle to deliver whatever is that talk content, the script itself they struggle to deliver. So to deliver a lot more of these actions and things like that and do that would be very, very stressful. And so hence the dimension that may come out in a talk could be more by way of distractions and negative effects of body language. And I think in public speaking context, more importance was put to make sure that the body language related thing is not distracting and it's not negative and remains neutral. So it can add a little bit to the content, but if you try to put too much of emphasis like we do in TV shows or movies, then that is just not sustainable. There they take 10-second shots and put them together. Here we are trying to do 10 minutes talk in one shot. So that's a big difference. That's all I want to re-emphasize. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. This was a very lively discussion, and I appreciate your input into this. This was excellent. It's something that we should all think about and also practice. Okay, so at this point we'll take a brief pause and then start our go to our final segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live, episode number 14, segment number 3. This segment, we're going to again revisit a topic that we discussed in episode 13, humor. But this time we added 2 videos for all of us to view from some experts. These are 2 professors who had given TED Talks. One is a professor from United Kingdom. Her name is Sophie Scott. And the other one is a professor from University of Colorado. His name is Peter McGraw, and he also has a book called The Humor Code that I'm currently reading. I'm almost halfway done. Humor is a very interesting topic. I consider humor as an advanced topic. And this is something that Julie and I talked about last week. And I'll have somebody else go through. I think, Latesh, you were going to go through this benign violation. So I'll let you cover that part in one of the speech that one of the talks that came up. So you can take that, like what exactly does that mean, and maybe give us an example. But let me just I had these simple 5 rules that I like to follow, and maybe there are more, but these are the ones. I tell people to be very careful of humor, because humor is one of those things where it's a fine line where if you're not careful, then it could end up stomping on your main message. And I always tell people that it's better to be boring good than bring humor into it and become boring bad. And that's just not what you want to do. Let me give you an anecdote, an example of what happened. This was nothing to do with humor, but it was an advertisement that was done during the Super Bowl in the 70s, I believe. It was the famous, it was by Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola had this commercial that they aired, I think it might have been 79, I'm not sure now. And it had to do with this famous football player named Mean Joe Green. And Mean Joe Green is injured and is really in a bad mood. And this young kid is this big fan of Mean Joe Green, sees him as he's entering the locker room, and he wants to get his autograph. And Mean Joe Green is just not in the mood. He's just like, I just want to get the hell out of here. I'm hurt. I want to get into my locker room. And then the kid gives him a bottle of Coke to Mean Joe Green. And Mean Joe Green, drinks, and then you see he's chugging, he's drinking it. And suddenly he's like, wow, now I'm feeling a little better. Not that better, but a little better. And then he realizes that kid just, made him feel good. And you see him at the end throw his sweaty jersey to the kid. And the kid is like, oh my God, I got the jersey of Mean Joe Green. He's so happy. So that was the commercial, okay? Now, I don't know if I want somebody's sweaty jersey, but this kid was very happy that he got a jersey from Mean Joe Green. It's like an honor. Like, God has given me something here, And, but here's the tricky part of this. That commercial, everybody loved it, and we're talking about it. I'm bringing it up. Now we're in 2015. But the person who originally aired that commercial only aired it, he stopped it. We're not going to air it anymore. And the reason was that people loved that commercial so much, but they weren't buying Coke. And the purpose of that commercial was not to entertain the people so that they enjoyed the commercial, but so that they would go out immediately and rush to the nearest grocery store and buy more Coke. But that's not what was happening. So humor is like that. That if you use humor and you're too good at it, then people will think about the joke that you just gave and not even remember the message that you were trying to convey. So you want to be very careful that you're not too funny. Otherwise, you're in the wrong profession. You should become a stand-up comedian then. So that's number one rule, that you don't want to stomp on your main message. So avoid it if you're not good at it. The second is, we all think that we're funny. Our friends all find you funny. Your wife or husband may find you funny. But don't think that just because the people that know you find you funny, that other people are going to find you funny. Most likely they're not. So don't wing it when it comes to humor. Humor is something you really have to practice it. Like in this Speech Talk Live, if I want to inject humor, I'd rather practice and get some feedback. If I don't see you smiling, then I think it's not working. At that point, I better not use it in a real speech, because it's going to bomb, as Latesh found out. His example with his stage get. I don't know. We'd like to know what kind of humor he was using there. Maybe he can talk about it. The other one is, this is the fourth rule, that if you think that your humor is likely to offend even one person, and this is really a difficult one, don't use it. Because humor is one of those things that some people will take it in a wrong way. And that's where that whole concept theory that Latesh is going to explain is going to come into play, on how you use that benign violation theory. And the other thing is, if you're going to use humor, the number one target that you want to use is yourself. Okay? Because if you make yourself, it kind of, not desensitized, I'm not sure what it makes the people much looser.
I lost my internet, sorry. I'll try to watch, but I'm not in a position to participate. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, you seem to. So the number one target, if you want to use humor to play it safe, is yourself. And that could be anything, but make sure, again, do it in a way that doesn't stomp on your message, where you're constant, and do it only once. Like a lot of people, they always say use self-deprecating humor, and it's effective as long as you use it once. And the second is, if you want to target somebody else, target high. That means pick on, and again, this is risky. I would avoid it, but like celebrities, politicians, but don't be mean, because one of the things about humor is that you can become very mean when you're using humor. So those are the 5 rules that I just recently wrote about, and I think these speeches, they give us a very good idea on what makes people laugh, what makes them smile. And one of the things that I mentioned to in the last weeks when we talked about this topic is, your goal is not to make people laugh, because you're not a comedian. And comedy, there was a famous British actor, when he was dying on his deathbed, said this famous quote, "Dying is easy, comedy is hard." So that just goes to show that the comedy is not that easy. We all think like, wow, we're so funny, but we're not. Other people don't. I'll give you one example, and then I'll let you guys say a few words on this. So when I was one time doing a talk when I was at Oracle, and at that time I had a partner that we were doing a talk. It was like a paid thing. People paid like $99 to come listen to us talk about the Oracle's products. This was when internet was just becoming big. And at that time there were all these acronyms. So my partner that I was doing this to talk with, his name was Amal, and we used to joke around. I said, these acronyms, they kind of remind me when I was taking chemistry and I had to memorize the periodic tables. And we always thought that was really funny, that, wow, periodic table with these formulas, because there are all these acronyms in this internet, right? So I would use it. We tried it 3 times in both, because we did three talks. One was in Boston, one was in New York, and I think the other one was in Newark or Philadelphia. I don't remember now. And every time it bombed. Nobody laughed. And every time I would say it, and then I would look at him, and we were like, nobody's ever laughing at that. But we always thought that was funny. So it gives you an example that what you may think is funny, other people will just not get it. So anyway, Julie, what are your thoughts on those 2 talks that you viewed, and your overall thoughts on humor? Oh, we got Somyan back. Okay.
Hi, Somyan. Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, I somehow it's my eyes and my brain. I missed the one by Sophie Scott. However, I really loved the one on the benign violence. I learned a lot. I think I think he gave some really good guidelines on what benign violence is, and I know Latesh will be helping us with understanding that. If I want to pick one thing that I thought was fascinating, and I watched the video several times, is his integration of auditory sensory mode with the visual. So, for example, when he said, I created this lab called the Humor Research Lab, unless you got the visual of it, you don't get all the funniness, because what he did was a latrine, you know. And so I liked the sophistication of melding the auditory senses with the visual senses, because clearly I think our brain is multi-modalities, and when you use more than one modality, and he did it in such an innovative way, it really heightened my sense of experience. And I think his humor speech was very great, and his guidelines were great. So with that, I'll turn that over back to you.
Yeah, I think we lost Soumyan again.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Latesh, you want to talk about overall humor, and what kind of humor did you use in your speech? And what was that explain us a little bit more about that benign violation theory that Peter McGraw talks about in his TED Talk.
Right. The StageGates humor which I had actually used, I think I'll try to connect with that at some point of time, but I will try to give some thought about what I read through on her part, that is the Humor Research Lab. This is something really different, because I never thought that someone can actually slice and dice concept of a very natural phenomenon of laughter, or rather humor. And it's been done. Maybe this may be one way of showing how we can actually propose this kind of a theory. So it talks about two aspects, basically violation and benign. Violation is like something that is when we are brought up in a particular system with the upbringing and with the kind of the way we are supposed to be under rules, right? We have certain rules which we learn or we develop as and when we grow up. So, like for example, a very simple example would be like at office. When we are in a very corporate setup, a corporate environment, I'm looking at my machine and I'm doing some work. I'm working on some spreadsheets and I'm creating some kind of a tool, etc. I don't expect that somebody comes and comes into my inner space and they start talking about something humorous or something like this. So that's, I have set a guideline. I set a rule for myself, saying that is the violation. If somebody comes into that space, that is like violating my inner thought process. So now if someone comes with a humor, probably I will not be in a position to laugh at it. Rather, it would be more like I'm getting disturbed. So that kind of I would look at it in a way that he's approaching. He is unnecessarily getting into my zone, my space. So that trespassing aspect, if it is done in a very in a way it is methodologically done, and in a way that it doesn't hurt too much, but it's done in a very, I wouldn't say benign way, but it's a benign, violent way. That is like he comes and talks about the spreadsheet which I'm working on. He says that it is already been done by somebody else. You are just creating, and it has been done in a very bad way, in a good way. So he's trying to bring. That's like a very bad example of humor, but he might bring it out in a very humorous way. So that's like a violation. But then I'm fine with that, because it is bringing in some humor aspect as well. So that's like based on the cultural background, based upon the moral upbringing that we have been through. So we might not be able to appreciate some jokes, some humor at some point of time. That's one part of the theory, that is the violation theory. The second part is the benign theory. Benign theory is the normal day-to-day, like when we are with a group of friends and when we are enjoying, we just laugh out without, because it's a harmless thing, and it's the natural phenomena of expressing a joy. So that's like the very normal process of expressing your happiness. The other aspect, the third part that he explains is about the benign violation. So that is like a mix of both, and specifically it gives an example of tickling, right? If the tickling is done in a it's done in a harmless way, it is fine. So that's like it brings some kind of good feel. But if it is done beyond a certain point, it becomes it gets into the violation mode. So that's another way of looking at how a benign method has got into the violation stage. So there's a very fine line which we need to really understand and accordingly play around. So he has done it in a very methodological way, and the way he has put it out, the theory, he has already established the Human Research Lab, and the talk that he gave was explicitly mentioning about how we uses certain words, like he had mentioned about how one particular statement which was made on the T-shirt, which talked about my pen is huge. So when he said it has been put in a way that it doesn't sound offending, but if it is changed, then it will be like very different. So it's like how we are able to judge certain aspects in a very abstract manner, but making sure that it doesn't get into the violation mode, and it is also driving home the point. So that's one aspect of Pete's video. The second aspect of Sophie Scott, which talks about how we use laughter, this is like I found this to be really more impactful than even Hurl. Hurl is a methodology; it's a scientific study of how and what actually brings in and where we need to draw the line, etc. But here she talks how we are scientifically doing our laughter, and the specific example that she gave was about how our breathing pattern and smiling is actually our enemies for laughter. So that was a very interesting point that she made. So the kind of muscles that are involved, right, the kind of senses that are involved in all these three mechanisms of laughter, breathing, and smile, and it's the same. So when she talks about breathing and smiling, and how our rib cages are stressed, and how we actually we need to breathe in properly. Maybe Julie, the meditation aspect also comes in play here. So laughter is very meaningful, and it is contagious. And she mentions that laughter becomes it is a contagious phenomena. And as and when we grow, like when we become older and we get into that stage, probably it doesn't become too much of a contagious. I mean, so there are many aspects to it, but it's a very ancient behavior that helps everybody, all of us, to make ourselves feel better. And there's a lot of positivity involved when we talk, when we laugh, when we are giving out such kind of positive vibes. It's actually helping us to throw that into that's like throw positivity outside, and it will come back to us at later some point of time. So it's very important to be to laugh out, to be to just ignore everything else and then just be ourselves and give a good laugh instead of faking it. It's better to be natural and just give it out. All right, so that's about it from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's excellent explanation, Latesh. Yeah, I think all of the stuff you said is really quite right on the point, because this is something that Julie and I discussed last week, that humor, if used well, it tends to loosen the environment. It makes people, you come across looking more interesting. and you become more relatable, and also you're not taking yourself too seriously. And one of the things, and this is the part that I'd like to get your thoughts on it before we close this out, is unless you know your audience well, like I know you guys well, so humor is something that I can feel comfortable using. But if you're giving a speech, then my view is that you really don't want to start with the humor. Humor is something you wait till like middle of the speech, once the audience, you get the feel of the audience. And also, humor is also taking risk, right? Because humor is likely the part that's going to fail. Your speech may work, but your humor is likely to fail because you have no control over how people perceive humor. But if they have come to listen to your speech, whether it's on meditation or stage gates, and if you talk about meditation and stage gates, then they're at least, you're going to meet their expectation. The humor is the part that's not something they're expecting. So right away, I don't know if that's a violation, but that's something they're not expecting, and that's where you're taking the risk. That's your ad, value add, or whatever you want to call it, that you're going to be bringing into the speech. And the question is, do you do that right in the front, or do you wait till the middle and then also do it at the end? Because at the end, the good thing is that if it's failed, then it's failed. It's over. The speech is over, so they're happy that the speech is over. They're not going to get any more jokes or whatever, humorous things that you're going to say at the end. But if it's good, then they're going to miss you because they're like, oh my God, I wish he would stay on longer. So also the where you use humor in the speech is also very important. Like some people like to start with the humor in the beginning. The risk there is that it could become so overpowering that the rest of the message, people may not even understand why did he start with the humor. Or it could be so good, like if it's making a point that clarifies, that accentuates the message, then it could be very powerful. But again, to pull it off, you got to practice. And here's the place where you would practice that, whether to use the humor, where to use it. And that's kind of hard to say. There are no hard and fast rules there. That's something based on how we are comfortable, how comfortable we feel, whether it's in our personality. And it requires a lot of practice. Humor is hard, and one thing, as I was pointing out, is that the stand-up comedians that you see on TV, when you see them, you see their routine, and it's flawless. But I just read that in order to do that, they have to rehearse and practice in front of people, because they have to watch exactly their facial gestures, their motion, the way they're using the voice, the pauses, the timing. It gets very complicated. And I think I read somewhere when Jerry Seinfeld first went on the late night show, Johnny Carson, I believe, he had a 6-minute monologue or routine, and he practiced, I think, some numbers, which was astronomical. So it just goes to show that if you're going to use humor, you really got to take it seriously. Don't wing it. And most likely, if you do it, it is going to fail, and you don't want that to happen if you have a main message that you want to convey. So, Julie, before we any closing thoughts before we wrap this show?
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I think I need to think more about humor and thinking about it more seriously. I think many of us have a neutral sense of we have our own distinct humor, and maybe part of that is uncovering our ability to connect through humor. So I like to think about that. Thank you.
Excellent. Latesh, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think by default, all of us are having humor within us, but over a period of time, we get molded into our different personality, maybe because of multiple causes. But if we try to be natural to ourselves, humor will automatically come in. It's just about not being mindful about the particular that particular point of time, but just be yourself, and automatically humor will kick in. Thanks.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to just occurred to me, and this is something where humor is all around us, by the way, and the only way you can become good at it is if you look around and look for humor in any situation. So we just had a humorous situation happen to us on the show. We were talking about humor and we lost Somyan. I mean, I think that's pretty funny. That he wanted to say a lot about humor, and poor guy now is like going to watch us and say, I wanted to say all this thing, and another power outage, and I can't. So that became a funny thing. I mean, sorry, the joke's on Somyan here, but...
But we used the time. But we used his time, you know.
Right.
I literally used his time.
He's like really dying and saying, I wanted to say so much on this topic. I'd watched 2 videos, and just when I was about to give my talk on it, we lost power, and now I have to watch these guys tell me what humor is. And I think it's funny.
He should do a video, and we'll watch it.
So, Somin, you made your point without saying a single word on how humor really works. So there's an example on how funny Somyan really is. Whether he did that on purpose, we'll never know, but it was funny, I thought. All right, guys, thanks a lot for joining. And this was a long session. I know that a lot of the topics here were a little advanced, so we had a lot to talk about. And I think watching this again, we may revisit these topics again. But again, the main point is keep practicing, come on the show, and speak. Speak where you're speaking with other people, where you have to really make sure that you're able to, convey your message in a nice, coherent way. And this is I like this opportunity because it gives me, because after this, I don't get a chance to give a talk to an attentive audience like you guys. All right, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right, bye, Latesh. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jay.
Bye.
Thank you, Julie. Bye. Good weekend. Bye.
Bye.